right, everyone, I'm here today with Simon Otto to talk about That Christmas, a new animated feature on Netflix. And I want to start with a question that's either going to be very hard or very easy for you to answer. What do you think makes a good Christmas movie?
Well, it should make you laugh and feel something, I think, first and foremost, and set the mood for what's to come, whether you watch it early in December or Christmas Day. I think it should make you set the mood for, wanting to be at the fireplace or the Christmas tree or whatever, wherever you celebrate your Christmas moment. And then I do love that, Christmas movies are about family, love, loneliness, that they speak about the things that we think about in that period, change, what has changed over last year. Like there's lots of sort of Christmas themes because of how vulnerable we are during that time and how joyful we also are of actually having time to spend with your loved ones.
I love that that's a big theme in That Christmas as well. It's talking about not just, the joys and the happiness of the holidays, but the way that sometimes that can be a challenging time for people too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there is a line in the movie that Richard Curtis, who's the famed screenwriter who has written some of the most famous lines in film history, it seems, it's like he said, he has a line in there that Santa, our narrator, says, which is Christmas is a bit like an emotional magnifying glass. When you're sad, when you're happy, you're even happier, and when you're sad, you're even sadder. It makes you feel sadder about your life, and I love that kind of is a little bit through which glass we're watching this film, or we made this film. And I think that there's truth. I think there's a vulnerability that we have. We have desire we have expectations, we have desire to be joyful and celebrate and whatnot, and be together with your loved ones. But it comes with so much expectations that inevitably the plans that we have for Christmas, they don't turn out exactly the way we're expecting. Something unexpected seems to happen. And it's those Christmases that are usually the most memorable, and which is why we call our movie That Christmas, because it's that Christmas when this blizzard came to town and turned the Christmas of these kids upside down.
Exactly. And there's also a sort of running theme in the movie about Christmas traditions and how we mix those up. I really liked that we had kids sort of bemoaning their parents' Christmas traditions and trying to make their own. Do you have any holiday traditions that you don't enjoy that much, but you do every year anyway, just because they're tradition?
I mean, I have to say, I've been quite successful in actually, nipping those in the butt. Like I'm married to a Japanese American woman, and the first Christmas, this may have been Thanksgiving, but Thanksgiving or Christmas, we did the big turkey dinner with the sprouts and the greens, and I went like, it's nice, it's delicious. But you Japanese people have literally the best food in the world. Like, why are we not doing a shabu shabu or something? Wouldn't that be much more fun? And I sort of managed to have sort of the food traditions be redirected into what we love most today, not what we loved most, 100 years ago. And I think, so I do think that there is, and we've definitely talked about this very, very closely, like analyzing Christmas traditions and what people do and what people like. And you can see in the trend, even in the surveys that we've done, that some Christmas traditions, kissing under the mistletoe or whatever, like some are kind of on their way out and new ones are coming up. Like, I think sitting in front of the television and watching Netflix is, for example, probably a new tradition that a lot of people have introduced. And I like the idea of that challenging traditions makes you think about the traditions that are there for a reason. And the first single most important one, of course, sounds a bit corny, but it is true, is to be together. Because in my family growing up, inevitably there was some drama, whatever, the dog ate the treat off the Christmas tree, or the food was burnt, or something happened, somebody didn't want to sing along on the songs. The true moment of Christmas is when it's all over, the Christmas gifts are unwrapped, and you're just sitting there and you're just looking at each other, having conversations about what happened and who loves who, and like this sort of moment of truth where you just relaxed when all the expectations are behind you, and that's to me when actual Christmas is happening.
Exactly. And then hopefully this year, when they're all sitting down and hanging out, they're also going to put on Netflix and check out That Christmas.
That would be a particular treat. I mean, that's obviously what we set out to do, is to give audiences something that they'll not only, turn on and check out and laugh along and stay in it, because hopefully the movie grabs you in a way that hopefully is a bit unexpected, but that it's a movie that you will want to rewatch when you finished it, because you've experienced something that you didn't see coming, and that was sort of our ambition, as filmmakers, is to really just take people on a ride that they want to do over and over.
Definitely. And now we had mentioned the great Richard Curtis earlier. This movie is actually based off of a series of children's books that he did. Did you know about the books beforehand? And how did you go about picking things from the book to sort of bring out and highlight in this film?
I actually did not know about the books because they're quite local to the UK, at least at that time, and now they've sort of gone a bit more worldwide. But our first conversation was about a Christmas special based on the first book, which was called The Empty Stocking, about twin girls that Santa mixes up on Christmas night. And very quickly, in the conversation with the famed Richard Curtis, who did Love Actually, Four Weddings and a Funeral, Yesterday, Bridget Jones, like so many incredible romantic comedies, that very quickly we realized that, well, there's a second book and the third one on the way. How about we take these books and intertwine them into, a Richard Curtis movie for a family audience, with him, of course, writing the script. So that discovery was really, for me, I mean, I was the right person at the right time, that I got to make this film. But to answer your a question about what was unique about it is that, first of all, the script wasn't written at that time. So I actually had a chance to collaborate with Richard Curtis and his co-writer Peter Suter on developing the script. And Richard says this interesting fact, which is, he adapted War Horse, or worked on the adaptation of War Horse, and he adapted the Bridget Jones Diary films with another writer. And in those kinds of experiences, you have to reduce those giant books to its essence and kind of find the movie within that book by taking things out. In our case, the children's books are quite small and really sweet and charming. We had the opportunity to not only take the kernel of the idea of each book and intertwine them, but add to it. So that the character arcs are much, much deeper, much more dramatic, because what we set out to do was not only a Richard Curtis movie for a family audience, but to give the audience the power of animation and turn it into a sweeping, dynamic, cinematic experience.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite storyline or character that you were able to expand on in the film?
Yeah, I really connected with Danny's story, the little boy, the lonely boy who, moved to this town from the city, doesn't know anyone, is a bit of an unseen outsider. In order to make this film, I moved to London for 4 years from LA, and became a bit of a tourist, right? A bit of the outsider. But I took my son out of his school here in LA and stuck him into an international school in London. So he, in front of my eyes, while I was making this film, went through the experience of this little boy. And in fact, I took him, before we cast actors, as the scratch actor of Danny. So the parallel, and there's a lot of little emotional things in this film and in his story that I feel really related to. And in fact, there's a tiny little fun fact, if you listen to very closely, at one point he gets a phone call from this sort of absent dad who is in a different part of the country. And that's me. That's my voice. Listen really closely, but so I felt a little like that was like, okay, I'm the bad dad, the who feels a bit guilty. So let me be that villain.
That's fair. That's a good little cameo. I like that. Yeah. Fun. Now we're talking about the incredible voice actors as well that you got for this film. How did you go about collecting your cast and playing all the roles that you yourself were not playing?
Yeah, very interesting process. Of course, I had some voices that I knew I was after right from the moment I read the first draft script, which was like Jodie Whittaker, who plays the mother in Broadchurch, has this vulnerable voice, sounding voice, like she has a timbre in her voice that just makes you feel for her and you understand she's both smart but in a predicament. And she has this northern accent, which are northern accent in the UK, they're quite warm and tender. I just felt like that from the start, felt like quite interesting. And then we had to find a kid who can match that accent from the same area. And so the kid who plays Danny is this, a first timer doing a sort of a big movie, and it worked so well. It was so beautiful. And in the casting process, working with Richard, of course, who I wanted to be a part of that whole experience, because he gives us access to so many great actors like Bill Nighy or Rhys Darby. In those conversations, we kind of came at it from different angles, which was interesting because to him, it's all about, the level of performance, the ability to give you options and be, truly believable in these performances. For me, it's a completion of character design. I wanted to make sure that the sound of the voice completes what we had set out to do in character design. So when it came to Santa, we put up some images and cut a bunch of different actors to it. Our idea was that Santa should come from the north. So what if it was Stellan Skarsgård from Sweden, or, and then you go to, what about Scotland? Well, yeah, of course. And, from Scotland to Brian Cox, it's a really short sort of leap. And the moment the Brian Cox came up, we all went like, oh my God, that's brilliant, because he has both an edge, because to us, Santa was a bit like master and commander who brings the ship to shore in the middle of a storm. But he also had, and we had some examples of like really sweet and caring, actually it was some poetry, or I can't remember, but it was so beautiful and sweet that he could be both tough and really caring. So there was an authority that came through his voice and the sweetness that we really loved. And God, was it proven to be the absolute perfect casting choice.
Now, you have an amazing background in animation. I love How to Train Your Dragon. And now you're getting to direct for the first time a full animated feature. What can you tell me about the animation in that Christmas and why you love animation as a storytelling medium?
I mean, I've been obsessed with animation ever since I was, 10 years old, and started drawing, with copying the old Disney movies. So animation to me is kind of it's so ingrained in my soul that I really can't let go. What I loved about directing, of course, is you take a step even further back from, seeing the movie as a whole and getting to experience directing actors and, doing sound design, working with composers, like areas that I didn't have as much exposure to before. But what I also loved about this was that it's an ensemble cast, right? The uniqueness about this film is that it's a multi-threaded storyline with multiple protagonists. And that's very unusual in animation. That's not something you tend to do in animation, because we're all about single heroes in a fantastical world on a fantastical journey of some sorts. And the fact that we could have a really grounded, real world story, or multiple storylines that are set in this town, was really interesting to me. But I saw very quickly the parallels of things that interest me, because How to Train Your Dragon is about an ensemble cast. It's about a multitude of characters that are all idiosyncratic and different. And that's what I was really hunting for in this film, is like believable performances that are both funny but emotional, but that each character kind of represents these different archetypes, if you will, that we can kind of recognize in our personal lives. And I think that's the thing that interests me the most, is that when I see a character, let's take the twins, Charlie and Sam, and you immediately recognize their personalities. You've come across these personalities in your own life. And the caricature of that is what I love about animation.
Definitely, now that you've put years of work into this movie and it's finally coming out and everybody's going to get to see it. Tell me the scene or the moment you're most proud of.
There's so many amazing moments. Like I'll give you two because I think they're describing the two polar ends of the film. One is the scene where Danny thinks Christmas is now happening. Mom is here. We're having Christmas lunch. And she gets a phone call from the hospital that she has to go back to work. She's the only one who can reach it. And that's that moment that ensues has so much reality and dilemma in both of the characters that I'm quite proud of how that played out and the depth of that scene. And then the most magical moment on the other side is when all the kids finally realize that Christmas is not happening. We pull out of their little bedrooms one by one and fly up into the sky. And of course, the one character that they all forgot about, that is the thing that brings Christmas, is Santa comes bursting through the clouds in this really sweeping musical moment composed by John Powell, who did the How to Train Your Dragon score. That is the most magical moment in the film. So those two scenes, in contrast, are probably the moments I'm most proud of.
I think that does really encapsulate the film as a whole, and I can't wait for everybody to see it. Thanks for talking with me today.
Thank you very much for having me, Jessica.